I was locked in the dark for what felt like hours. She went as far as to remove all of the light bulbs so I couldn't see. And just when I tried getting out, she slammed the door, hard, deep into my fingers. My father was in the military, and when I was 7 years old, he was asked to relocate to Korea. I was devastated. I loved my father so much because, unlike my mom, he always made time for me and my siblings. But no matter how much I begged him to stay, my dad left. The day he got in that car was one of the hardest days of my life. I sat by the door crying, wishing he would turn around, when my grandmother sat down next to me and said, "A year isn't that long. I promise it'll be over before you know it." But I didn't see it that way. A year was still a year, and no matter how much I tried to let it fly by, I still felt his absence every day. For the next year, it was just me and my siblings alone with my mom. We were never that close with her, but we all tried to be happy with our situation. Except, it didn't take very long for my mother to start acting weird. She started bringing different men over to our house every night, and always had a drink in her hand. We would barely have anything to eat, and would have to beg our mom for food. Even though my mom was bringing men around, she still spoke with my dad like nothing was going on. Then, she began neglecting us. She would leave us home alone or bring us to babysitters who lived in very unsafe places. My siblings and I hated going there and begged to go home. My mom stopped feeding us and instead dragged us around to different men's houses, sometimes leaving us in a hot car for hours while she was inside. Then, the hitting started. She had this belt with diamonds on it that she would hit us with, often on the back, for little things. Things stayed this way for the whole year while my dad was gone. The only happiness I ever felt was when my half-brother Andrew visited. Maybe I was just too little to understand what a brotherly relationship was, but Andrew was my world at the time. He seemed to always be there when my mom wasn't, and he cooked us food, even if he wasn't very good at it. Even when he went to his dad's house, out with his friends, or in his bedroom while he was watching movies, I even remember him begging me to leave him alone. But what can I say? For the first time since my dad left, I felt safe. One day, my mother, my siblings, and I were getting in the car after visiting Andrew's dad. Andrew hugged my mom and said, "Thank you for being my mother." I was confused. Was this some kind of goodbye? I didn't want to believe that the only person who made me feel safe could leave, like my dad. But after that, Andrew stopped coming around. Mom told me he was going to permanently live with his dad, which meant no more Andrew. I was heartbroken. I had lost my father, and now I was losing the only person that took care of me. A few days later, my dad called from Korea. It was the first time I had heard from him, and I couldn't help but cry. I told him everything that was happening. How mom wouldn't feed us, how she would leave us with random people. He was shocked. I hoped with all my heart he could do something, and he promised he would. And he did, but it was a very slow process. People in suits came to my school and asked me questions concerning my mother and our living conditions. My mom told us to tell them what she called the truth, which was that she always fed us and took good care of us. As much as I wanted to do this, I just couldn't lie to these people. My sister did, but I didn't. I just wanted to see my dad and brother again. After many months, my dad gained full custody of my siblings and me. We moved to Tennessee with my grandparents. I was very sad that Andrew couldn't come with us, but my dad told me that Andrew had to live with his dad. I was excited to finally see my dad again, to be with him again. But as soon as I saw him, I realized that he was different now. He wasn't as happy and caring as he used to be. In fact, he'd pushed everyone away. He always seemed sad. He was there to parent, but that was all. My grandmother usually looked after us the most. My dad promised that he would never let me or my siblings go back to live with my mom, and I believed him. But it didn't take long before my issues started to pop up. In 2013, I was diagnosed with ADHD. and between 2015 and 2017, I was diagnosed again with depression. Medication and therapy became a part of my everyday life. And even though my dad never said it out loud, I could see how disappointed he was in me. I hated the feeling of being broken. I had problems behaving at home and paying attention. I often woke up during the night because of nightmares and had to go to my grandparents' room to wake my grandmother up, just so I knew I wasn't the only one awake. She would often tell me everything was okay and to go back to sleep. I had to have a 504 plan at school because I was having trouble paying attention. My grandmother and I would often argue about little things, and I'll admit I could get aggressive. I just couldn't help it. It was like I wasn't in control of my own body. In 2017, my dad told us he had met a girl named Brenda. The only problem was that Brenda lived in Missouri and we lived in Tennessee, so my dad could only talk to her over the phone. However, she did visit once or twice, and when I first met her, she seemed really nice. She brought us gifts which were pretty meaningful considering it was for children she'd never met. Even better, I saw a part of my dad that I hadn't seen in a long time. He was so happy when she was around and made everyone laugh. Then, my dad told us they were getting married. My siblings and I were so happy, but my grandparents didn't approve and refused to come to the wedding. I was kinda happy that they weren't coming, as my grandmother and I always fought and she often complained about the smallest things. And I forgot to mention, Brenda had 3 cats, and I love cats, and I even had one of my own at the time, Charlie. So, a new house, cool stepmom, 3 new cats, and a chance to get away from my grandparents. It sounded like a win-win. But the moment Brenda moved in, everything changed. Brenda didn't like that I was different, so she tried her best to pretend that I wasn't there. And if she couldn't, she would often lash out at me for the smallest things. Now, I'm not going to say that I was 100% innocent all the time, but I'm not going to say I was 100% guilty either, because nobody deserves to be treated how Brenda treated me. She hated my mental disability so much that she made my life a living hell, and just for her own enjoyment. Sometimes, she'd take off all the light bulbs in my room and lock me in there, in the dark. I had to sit in the darkness for hours with nothing to do. She would take away my books. And if I tried opening the door, she would slam the door hard into my hands. Things escalated when Brenda started to get in my face and tell me that I was just like my mother, a lowlife, piece of trash who would never amount to anything in life. She would grab me and swing at my face, all while my dad sat there in horror. Sometimes he would quietly say, "All right, that's enough." But he wouldn't say it loud enough for her to stop. I was forced to spend the majority of my time in my room because of Brenda, and I wasn't allowed a phone, just library books. I couldn't even eat dinner with them, so instead my dad would bring my meals to me. But then that stopped because Brenda said he was giving me too much attention. Anytime I tried talking to my dad about what was going on, he would tell Brenda everything I said. People in a relationship aren't supposed to keep secrets from each other, he would tell me. Brenda convinced my dad that I was trying to split them apart and that I wasn't to be trusted. My dad believed her and stopped talking to me. I didn't have anyone to talk to. Not my dad, not my grandparents, not even my siblings. Brenda had convinced them that I was trying to take their happiness away too. I was alone in my little room all the time. I didn't think my life could get any worse when my dad dropped the biggest bombshell of my life. He wasn't my real dad. I was in total shock. I didn't know what to say. The only thing racing through my mind was that this person, who I thought was my dad, had been lying to me for 14 years. He told me that my mother called him while he was stationed in Afghanistan and told him that she had been taken advantage of by some random guy and had fallen pregnant. My dad sat in my room crying, saying sorry, and I was sorry too. If I just was aborted, my dad's life would have been so much easier. You would think that Brenda would have been nicer to me, but her torments grew worse. She would often tell me that everyone would be better off if I was gone, and how happy everyone was when I wasn't around. I truly felt like she wanted me to disappear just so she wouldn't have to put up with me. And only a few months later, Brenda forced me to go back and live with my mom. She said I wasn't welcome in her house, and that I wasn't even my father's daughter, just some lowlife living off them. I was heartbroken. My grandparents were furious with my dad for even thinking of sending me back, so instead, they took me in. However, it's only temporary. They are looking to send me to a boarding school next year. I try not to think about what comes next, and for now, I just feel lucky that I have a place to sleep and food to eat. I'm still struggling with nightmares and flashbacks of everything, but my medication has helped so much, and I know that one day, I will be able to beat my demons. I've been to a therapist, and she has helped tremendously. So if you are struggling out there, just know that you can and will get through this.